Hey guys, I'm not a big believer in wasting your time, so let's get straight to the point here. So you're just going to go into your menu, you're going to go all the way to the left here to settings and click on it, picture. So you're going to be in game mode, or you should be anyway. You can turn game mode off if you want. The only issue I find is that while it unlocks a lot of additional settings for controlling the image, it's going to reduce your input latency, or it's going to increase your input latency. So in a game like Demon's Souls, where timing, like precise timing, matters so much, you definitely want that input lag as low as possible. So I would leave it in game mode if I were you. Let's get expert settings. So first, your brightness. I kind of tend to start with brightness and contrast at 50 always, just because it really makes HDR pop out a little bit more, and with video games you want them to be nice and bright and for the colors to pop. You can definitely reduce brightness depending on your environment. Like if you're playing late at night and the game is like searing your retinas, then feel free to turn the brightness down. It's really not as big of a difference as you'd think. It's not like turning it down is going to make it hard to see, but I like having it at 50 by default. Contrast, 50 as well for stuff like this. Although if you look at the background there, when I bring contrast down, it does make the background a little bit clearer. However, I think that this area in the game, that background's meant to kind of be blown out. That's part of the effect. If you look at the inside of the place, like bringing contrast down at this point is personal preference. But I think that having that kept right up at 50 is definitely your best bet. As for sharpness, I like giving the game a little bit of sharpness, because if you keep it at 0, it tends to seem a little soft. The focus gets soft. But if you bring it up to about 5, it looks nice. If you crank it too high, you'll notice that your textures become quite a bit more jagged. Just like it's like a really small difference, but if we're talking about like getting things to an ideal level, I would say around 5 is good. Color by default's 25. I'd boost it just a bit. It's nice to make the colors sing a little bit, especially in a game as beautiful as this one. If you crank that too high, though, things like that what's it called? Chandelier, whatever that is in the background, you'll start noticing that it gets really warm, and that's just the colors are becoming a little oversaturated if you go too high. So I'd keep that around 30. Tint I always keep in the middle there. You can mess with that if you want, but I don't think it looks artificial if you mess with it. Local dimming does not have an effect on games as far as I've been able to tell. I don't think that it does anything, so I just leave it at standard. Contrast enhancer makes a big difference. If you switch that to low or to high even, it's going to brighten up your image a lot. And that may seem like an attractive thing at first. And honestly, some games so far on this TV, I've found that darker areas, it actually becomes almost impossible to see. And so as a last-ditch thing, you can turn this up. It's nice to have it as a failsafe, but it is really artificially adding to the brightness, and it will blow out a lot of your detail. And I mean, if you're looking at it on low and you get comfortable with it and then you switch it off, you're going to be like, man, that's way too dark. But trust me, just play it with it off for a little while. Your eyes will adjust, and it's just a far more natural image. Color tone, always standard for me. A lot of analysts like to put it to warm 1 or even warm 2. They say it's the truest color. I don't agree. I just find that it makes it look like there's sort of a crude sepia tone filter slapped over everything. But again, like I just said about contrast enhancer, I'm sure if you left it on warm 2 for a while, your eyes would adjust and it might actually be nicer overall. But I find standard is way more, it just feels more accurate. It feels more like of the world in the game that you're playing. White balance, you don't really touch. Gamma, this is more so than contrast enhancer. This is where I would go if you feel like things are getting too dark. Bringing up the gamma levels a little bit tends to boost midtones. So like your character is going to go up in brightness without anything really getting blown out. So that's my go-to if I feel like things are too dark. But for Demon's Souls, I think it's pretty damn good at 0. Shadow detail, kind of similar. If the blacks are too crushed and you can't see the detail, then bringing this up will definitely give you a little bit more detail. Unfortunately, though, it also gives quote-unquote more detail to the highlights, and it will also sort of blow your image out, which is not ideal. So I like keeping that at 0 for Demon's Souls as well. Color space settings is a big one. and I think this is probably one that most people would gloss over. If I switch between auto and native here, it doesn't look like much is happening, but look at the fire on the ground here, or whatever that is. I find that, you know what, and through my phone, auto actually looks better, but trust me, to my eye, I really prefer native. It gives things more of just, I would say, a video gamey color. It's more full, sort of like a lush color, and it just makes like reds and blues and greens, any intense color, it brings it out far more, and it does not drain from it. So things like your spells, let me see if I even remember how to cast spells. They just look so much sexier when you've got that set to native. All right, so that's the first bit, and now let's go to General, and then down to External Device Manager. This is where your game mode settings are. So I turn AnyNet Plus off. I don't think that really has anything to do with this right now, sorry. Oh, yeah, actually, just a side note, AnyNet Plus, if you have that on, then when you turn your TV on with your remote, it's going to turn your PlayStation 5 on, and vice versa, and that gets really annoying. So if you've noticed that happening and you're wondering why, just turn that off. You'll be good. Okay, so game mode settings. Yep, whatever. Dynamic black equalizer is another one of those things that you can kind of use to play around with how bright or dark things are. I couldn't tell you exactly what this setting does, what the technical jargon is behind it, but I like leaving this one off. I find it kind of messes with your image a little bit if you play with that. Game Motion Plus, for me, always off. That's going to do some weird reverse interpolation stuff. You're going to get weird ghosting, especially in a game as like, dense graphically as Demon's Souls. Game Motion on is just going to give you a headache. One game that it works for is Tetris Effect. I find that like cartoonish stuff like that, it's actually pretty good, but for AAA stuff on PS5, I would stay away from that for sure. Input Signal Plus, Samsung Q90T only has the HDMI 2 port on the fourth port, and that should be on by default, but make sure that's on. Otherwise, you're not getting that 2.1 signal. Sorry if I don't know exactly how to explain that, but you want that on. HDMI black level, this is one that a lot of people miss. Auto is typically your best bet, but man, if you switch it low for Demon's Souls, I find that sometimes it's too dark, but I played most of this game with this on low, and it just made things look that much more realistic, that much more scary. The way that this game switches between fantasy and horror is so cool, and having this on low can really heighten that effect. I'd recommend trying that out, but that's up to you, of course. And the last thing's HGiG, which I think the idea behind HGiG is that it takes the settings of your TV and the settings of your game, and it's sort of like, without changing anything, it's providing the best image. I don't know enough about HGiG, and I tend to leave it off. But if you're playing around with your settings and there's something not right, you just can't put your finger on it, try switching this on if it's off, or off if it's on, and then going back through your settings and messing with them again. Honestly, it does make a difference. It's a slight one, but I prefer it off for Demon's Souls anyway. And then last but not least, let's go into the game settings. So if you go to display, this is a big one. If you have this on cinematic, it's going to make the game look incredible. Incredible. If it's going to make the game look amazing if you're standing still and you're just looking around at the scenery. That's your 4K native textures, and I don't know what I'm talking about. It looks really good on cinematic, but you're going to want performance for this game, because that's what unlocks the 60 frames a second, and it is infinitely more important to have frames in a game like Demon's Souls, where precision is everything. I didn't know about this switch until I was like halfway through the game. I had it on cinematic. I was stuck on a boss, and my brother was like, well, have you tried switching to the 60 frames? And I was like, what? And oh my God, if you play with it on for 10 minutes and then you try to switch to cinematic, you're going to get a headache. So yeah, performance for sure. Motion blur, I like keeping it around the middle there, but crank it if you please. Film grain is just distracting in a game like this. Again, personal preference. Visual filters is crazy, because if you go into photo mode in this game and you mess with everything, you can actually keep whatever settings you have on for gameplay, I believe, which is just a nuts idea for them to have put in. Bluepoint is pretty cool with that stuff. So, you know, try that out if you want, but if you do something crazy that looks good in a photo, chances are it's not going to look great in gameplay. Anyway, that's everything, guys. I hope that this was helpful and at least gives you a jumping off point. I know that when you get a new TV or a new console, you want it to be really exciting, and sometimes it can be frustrating because it doesn't look quite as good as you thought it was going to. There are just so many settings with this TV, and I really do think that there's a combination that fits everybody. So thank you for watching. Hope this helped, and maybe I'll do another one of these. Who knows? Hey guys, just in case you're still watching, I just wanted to do a little disclaimer about the content of this video. With TVs this high tech and new, I think that there is a lot of variance in both the quality of the panel that you get and the way that the colors are corrected. I think on rtings.com it says that the Q90T, it has a kind of a low value pre-calibration and then a really high one post-calibration. I don't have the money to get it professionally calibrated, so I haven't done that. So the way that mine is calibrated out of the box is likely different than the way yours is, and so there is a chance that everyone will have better, or everyone will have their own best version of settings. So just a heads up on that. I'm definitely not trying to say that the way that I set mine is going to look as good on yours as it does on mine. Yeah, I think the most important thing to say is that I'm not a professional calibrator, and I do like to watch videos that these guys put up who are professional calibrators, where they discuss, you know, gamma curves and stuff like that, and how you can get the absolute best nits value with your brightness so that you see the most. And sometimes I try to follow their advice and dial in settings according to their professional idea of what is the best look. And I just find, to my naked eye, to my untrained eye, it does not look as good as it does when I mess with it myself. So that's what this video was, and that's what these videos all will be, is just me having extreme OCD and just fussing over the settings for a lot longer than your average person would, until I get to a point where I feel like, okay, this is as good as it's going to get. So that's all I'm trying to share with you, and I hope that you don't think I'm trying to preach anything. I just want to help out, because not a lot of people own this console yet, not a lot of people own this specific TV. And when I first got this stuff in the mail and I was all excited, I had a hell of a time finding any assistance online. So that's why I'm here. Hopefully that's probably, if you're here, that's why you're here, I'm sure. And I hope that this helped.